Okay, it's recording. Okay, Ed Ray. The first question I have for you. So you were involved in Special Olympics Oregon before I ever arrived,
Hmm.
and it seems as though people fall in love with the mission as soon as they get to know the athletes.
Right.
I volunteered in Minnesota before I moved to Oregon and loved it. Still keep in touch with one of the athletes that I was able to escort from event to event during the summer games, and it made me fall in love with the mission as soon as I connected with athletes. And so I want you to tell me your love story. What made you fall in love with this mission at some point in time where you wanted to be a part of the board and really make this an organization that you embrace?
So let me give you a very old story and a very recent story. So the very old story is back in the 1960s, early 1960s, I think it was 1965. I was a college student at Queens College in the City University of New York. And Bobby Kennedy was running for the US Senate in New York. And I was in some plays when I was in college. And we were there on a Saturday or Sunday in the theater, and we were painting some flats, scenery to put up for the whatever the theater production was. I'm trying to think what it could have been, not important. But anyway, we were working on flats for a play. And this theater was set up so there were actually two theaters, and they kind of I didn't realize it at the time. We were in one theater, there's another theater. I didn't realize that they kind of abutted each other. So if you're on stage in one and you go through this door to get to the other, you're already on stage in the other, so they both sort of, the audiences were out in away from the direction of where we were. So anyway, we're painting flats, and I'm wearing a t-shirt, and I got paint all over me. Everybody else does. Anyway, so we heard there was going to be this event in the other theater, and that Bobby Kennedy, who was running for the US Senate, was going to be the special guest there. And so we hear a lot of commotion, noise. We know that things are going on in there. So we sneak over to the door and we open it a crack so we can go and look in. And again, we had no idea how the other theater was set up because we'd never been in there, just the one that we were rehearsing in. And you could see a wooden floor and folding chairs. So we just thought it's like a big meeting room or something, and so, we're sort of at the back of the room, and we're going to try to peek in and see what's going on without getting noticed. Well, anyway, so we sort of inch out a little bit more, so we could sort of see, because we hear lots of people, but we can't see anything, just some folding chairs and a few people sitting there. Anyway, the long and short of it is we look out far enough to realize we are now on stage, and there are about 1,500 people who see us peeking out from this doorway, and they're dressed to the hilt to kill, because this is a big fundraising event, and you'll realize in a minute why I'm going through all this. But anyway, so we're there, and so there's kind of a commotion in the audience because somebody's up at the speaking, and we realize now whoever is on stage speaking has their back to us. Well, anyway, there's a bit of a commotion, and we look out, and it's Bobby Kennedy. And Bobby Kennedy turns around, and he signals to us. He sort of signals, "Come here, come here." And it's like, oh my God. And I think one or two others ran away, but there were like two or three of us, he could definitely see. So we felt like we couldn't run away. So we get up and we walk in. We look like hell. I mean, we're wearing dungarees and sneakers and t-shirts and got paint all over our faces and everything else. And so he signals us to come in. He doesn't say anything. So we stand up, we walk in, and he points over to his right from the podium. And there are some empty seats there. Presumably that's where he and the other speakers were or whatever. And he points to those seats. So we didn't know what to do. So we came in, we went down the side of the stage and we sat down. And he starts talking and he says, it's a great honor to be here, ladies and gentlemen. And he looks at us and he says, and special guests. And we could have died. If we could have sung through the floor, we would have. Anyway, this was for Special Olympics. It turned out it was because the family's dedication to mental health and mental health awareness that he was there, and one of the sponsoring agencies, I don't know if all of the intentions were that way or not. As you know, Ethel Kennedy was very much involved with Special Olympics and with the family involvement with mental health, given, you know, the experience that they'd had with his sister being institutionalized and so forth. Anyway, that was
your first.
That was my introduction to what would become Special Olympics International, which I'm sure it wasn't in 1965. Anyway, fast forward.
Years, and you've never shared that story with me. I love that.
So anyway, fast forward 2014, my late wife Beth died. And in 2015, I think it was 2015 or 16, the Governor Gold Awards dinner was held. As you know, that was it was a great event, and it was a fundraiser for Special Olympics as a major sponsor, and they honored Beth. And so I got eldest child Stephanie, my oldest daughter, came out and went to the dinner with me and heard her mother being recognized and so forth and so on. So that was very nice. And then it was after that that I was asked if I was willing to serve on the board of Special Olympics. And I was very reluctant because I knew as president, I really had no control of my calendar at all. And I said, look, you know, I think Special Olympics is wonderful. I said, but I don't know if I can even make it to the meetings. I have no, you know, my life is chaos. I mean, I was in a period, I don't want to go on talking about what life is like as a university president, but when Beth was alive, there were periods where we would not have dinner alone together for 2 weeks or more. Every night there were things to do, there were people to see, there were places to go, travel, etc. So I really was worried. What's that?
Was she supportive of that?
Oh, she was absolutely dedicated. She loved students, so she loved being around students and working with them. And that's how that building ended up having her name on it, that she had helped so many students individually that when they thought about, they wanted to name the Student Success Center, they said they wanted it to be the Beth Ray student success place. So that's how it got its name. But anyway, I said, you know, I didn't know if I could be there. And they sort of said, well, you know, it's okay. You don't have to. If you can't come, we get it. But, you know, if we could add your name to the list, that's good. You know, and then whatever you can do is okay. Mm-hmm. So I finally relented and said, okay. And, you know, I when I get involved, I get involved. So anyway, I was on the board and we were talking about various things. And it was clear that Newburgh was now getting too small for the state competition for Special Olympics. And the question was, well, what are we going to do? And I just said, you know what? I can't believe that if I talk to my athletic director and coaches and so forth, I can't believe they wouldn't be supportive of doing it at Reser Stadium at Oregon State. And sure enough, they were. I mean, you know, Scott Barnes, coaches, athletes, when they heard about it, they were all very excited. So anyway, that was when we essentially agreed that for 2017, I guess it would have been, we were going to have summer Special Olympics at Oregon State University. And I mean, if there's a place where I was hooked for life, it was at that event. It was extraordinary. One of the things that occurred to me, because my late wife, Beth, had physical challenges, was if you pay attention, and even if it's not you, you realize that we all have a way of being, I don't know, hard, oblivious to people around us who have special needs. And the easiest way I could describe what we do and don't feel badly about ourselves is they're kind of a bother. You know, if they just would go away, we could go about our business and chit chat and have fun. And now we got to have, you know, we got to widen the damn doorway, or we got to put in a special ramp, and, you know, it's only for a handful of people. And, you know, what a pain that we're being inconvenienced. We have to do all these things. Well, anyway, I saw her in a number of situations where it was clear to me that people would never say it, but they viewed it as unfortunate for them that she was there, and that there had to be accommodations for her. And part of what I felt was the sense of isolation and, you know, quite frankly, shunning that I know a lot of the friends and family of Special Olympians have to deal with every day in their lives, where people won't be overtly rude or mean to them, but they can tell from, you know, their, you know, the way they gesture, the way they move, the things they say, that they just wish you weren't there. And so one of the things that occurred to me in the period that she had the most challenges was that sense of isolation that goes beyond the individual with the disabilities, whatever they are, mental or otherwise, that families and friends just have to accept as part of their life. So when we had the Special Olympics at Oregon State University, I was very aware of the families. The athletes are wonderful, and it was great to talk to them, and they were wonderful back to me. I mean, it was just that part's, they're just so wonderful. It's you can't help but be drawn in. But I was also drawn to the families because I had that sense of what their day-to-day reality was. And to see them with each other in community and talking to each other and laughing and rooting for each other's kids in the competition, it was magical. I remember one mother coming up to me on Saturday, the first full day. They stayed in the dorms Friday night and Saturday night. Now, what you have to realize is when they were in Newburgh or somewhere else, they had to book the local motels, hotels. And so they would have parents and kids, and they'd all be sort of, you know, jammed into rooms together. Since they were able to use the residence halls during the summer for the athletes, it was like an Olympic village.
Yeah.
So the athletes themselves weren't with their parents or with their coaches. They were with other athletes. And so this one mother said to me the next morning, she said her daughter came rushing in to breakfast because they'd agreed, you know, they're going to meet to have breakfast together. And she told her mother that it was just like going to college. And you could see, you know, her mother was just beaming. She was so happy about that. And then all through the day, and we had a program Friday night, I think, as a prelude to the, or maybe, no, I guess it must have been Saturday night, because as we were wrapping things up. Anyway, they let in each county alphabetically, except for Benton County, because like the International Olympics, Benton County is the sponsoring county. So it came in kind of like the last country, you know, coming in. And they had leaders for their delegations. Well, who were the leaders of their delegations? Our student athletes. So a lot of our football players and gymnasts and basketball players, men and women, led those delegations in, and it just was magical. We had singing, we had some speeches, they had the dance afterwards.
Oh, a dance.
And then, they had some more activities Sunday morning. This fellow who, there's a place here called, give him a shout out, City Barber. There's a barber shop downtown Corvallis where I've gone ever since I've been here. But anyway, and he did polar plunge a couple of years. He's had some health issues, so he hasn't been able to do it lately.
Okay.
But Brett and his Brent is his name, and his co-worker Kim at the time, they closed down on Saturday when the Olympics were here, and they gave free haircuts to anyone who wanted them, to the student athletes. So they set up a little shop and they gave 20 or 30 haircuts to athletes. And he told me there was one where he was about to give him a haircut, and the athlete's mother called, and he was asked to hand the phone to Brent, and he did. And she said, he does not need a haircut. Do not give him a haircut. Just pretend you're giving him a haircut. And so that's what he did. But the community really got involved as well, which was nice. So I think if we, and I hope we can get to a point where we bring it back to Corvallis and to Reeser Stadium. There are a lot of people who will step up and volunteer, and it was incredible how many people they had and how wonderful the whole thing was from start to finish. I know Mark would remember it and some others, but I mean, just the idea of being able to recreate that is very motivating. And that really sort of got me. I mean, I was hooked. And then, I be honest, I think, if there was any sense of, how hooked I was, it was when you and Lori came to my office. I mean, I wasn't an officer. I wasn't on any committees. I was this sort of, one of these celebrity members of the board. People know who the president of Oregon State is.
Yeah.
And you both came in and were so sincere, so desperate for any help you could get. I mean, I knew there was no way I was not gonna do whatever I could do to help.
Well, and so I have yet to experience a state games. All I have heard are the stories from you, from Mark, from Jean, from Lou and Caitlin and Joe and everybody on our staff and board who've been a part of it. And it's sometimes I have to remind myself that that's a thing. Like that's what we do. Like we're not doing what we do right now. I'm proud of what we've accomplished, and I get excited. I get so excited by the little things right now, like going out to a basketball meet or something, but the grandiose experience, and you can't lose sight of how important it is for athletes to have that, like they deserve that stage and that feeling and the goosebumps and the ceremony. And so I can't wait to be able to share in that same experience. I can't wait.
We'll get there again.
We'll get there.
But I mean, it's just, as you say, it's just being around the athletes. I mean, what's not to like?
Right.
I mean, what's not to like? I mean, they're so open and they're so genuine, and they obviously have a lot of things in their lives they've got to struggle with, and yet they're so good-hearted. And, just to follow through on this theme about the families and the communities and, why do you feel a need to sort of get back to where we were? You remember the town hall we had here in Corvallis with the families. And I think both of us were really kind of worried about, boy, they're probably pretty damn mad at us, and they have a right to be.
Have a
And
right to
you
be.
know, we're going to have to wing it, but we're going to get our lumps, but we earned them.
Mhm.
And there were no lumps. There were no recriminations. There were no accusations. There were a lot of good questions about, so what do we do from here? What are you going to do? How is this never going to happen again? And then you realize, after getting together with these friends and family like that, that they've had to soldier on with so many challenges and with so much heartbreak in their own lives. They don't have room for any bitterness or accusations. They just want to get things done in the right way,
Yeah.
and to help their athletes and everyone around them have a positive experience. And so they're looking forward. They're not looking back. They want to know what are we all going to do going forward, and they have they've acquired a sense of community. So they felt like when we were telling them that we had let them down, they were saying, we're part of what are you talking about? We're part of the same community you're part of. We got a problem. So stop telling us that you screwed up and you're sorry. You're part of our community. We're part of that community. Together, we got to figure out how to go forward. So let's start talking about how are we going to go forward. Let's stop talking about assigning guilt.
Yeah.
And my God, what a wonderful experience. We went from thinking we were going to get beaten up to, sort of like, thank God, this is the way the world should work in general.
I think there's a lesson in that. I think a lot of people, when you realize you've made a mistake, or when you realize you let somebody down or something didn't go right, like, I think so often it's our natural reaction to be defensive, or, all right, what are our talking points and how are we going to make it look like we didn't do something wrong, and how do we position this? And what I really respected about you, it was easier for me to be able to come in because I was new. I was trying to be a part of the solution. For you to come in that town hall and apologize, like, not everybody would have done that, Ed. A lot of people would have come in with, well, here's everything that the board did right, or here's where we're not to blame, and you just came in and you apologized, and you said to those families, like, we let you down and we're not going to do it again. Like, we're going to figure this out. We're going to get it right, but we're sorry. I think when you do that, it makes it very hard for people to want to keep attacking. Like, you've apologized, you owned it. Like, and I know Mark and I left that town hall going, okay, it felt good because now we're all on the same team. Like, they heard what they wanted to hear. Like, we owned it, and I had incredible respect for you on that. And I wish, I don't know, I guess for me, it was a good kind of gut check around, we're all going to make mistakes. Like, we're human, there's always going to be things that happen, where it's the what if, shoulda, coulda, and to just be able to say, like, that's on me, I own it, my bad, but let's go forward. And so
there's a phrase, I'm sure you've heard it, but it's used more in the business world, and it's the concept of fail fast. It's like, fail fast. What the hell does that mean? Well, it means when you fail, own it, learn from it, and move on.
Yeah.
That's how we make progress. Because as you say, we all make mistakes. We all fail. We're all human. Own it. When you screw up, own it. If you don't, you're not going to learn everything you can learn from it to keep it from happening again. So if you care about getting things right, you have to own it when you get things wrong.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So,
and I know we both felt the same way, and I know Mark did when we went into that meeting. I mean, you always worry about you're going to get your you're going to get punched in the head. But at the same time, I think all three of us were just heartbroken for what these people were having to deal with, and the athletes that they had nothing to do with. This had nothing to do with them. They had done nothing wrong, and their whole world had been turned upside down because of the way in which we had failed and the extent to which we had failed. Yeah.
So in that time, and when you, well, maybe before the town hall period, but when you accepted the role as board chair, you didn't have to do that. And you're the president of a major university. And at the time, we were a kind of a dumpster fire. And it was a risk on your part. There was a very real chance that we wouldn't be able to navigate through the challenges that we were facing with the best efforts. There were no guarantees of that. And yet you said yes. And if we had failed to navigate through, we would have failed on your watch. And I know I'm not alone in saying how much I respect that and how much gratitude I have towards you for taking that risk, because it was. And I'm curious, and I don't know if I've ever actually asked you, but were you afraid? Like, was there any part of you that was afraid of your reputation or the spotlight that this could put on you? And not to make this into something bigger than it is, but it was very public at the time, and you stepped into the middle of it, and you didn't have to. You weren't on the inner circle of, the exec committee or the finance committee. Like you said, you were kind of this celebrity role on the board. And I think your biggest role was providing the connection with OSU to host the state games, a very positive and successful part of your board service. But to take that role, were you ever afraid? Did it ever occur to you like this could really reflect badly upon you if it went south? Or did you just...
I honestly can't ever remember being afraid about how people would interpret things if I felt I was doing the right thing for the right reasons, and maybe I could explain that, maybe I couldn't. I mean, I've had some very unpleasant situations I've had to deal with when I was chair of the NCAA board. You know all about that. I mean, I'm sort of more guided by do the right thing as best you can understand it, more than anything else. Now, the situation I was presented with, and again, it's sort of like, maybe you're going to get blamed, maybe the thing will go under and you'll be blamed. So what did I do? One of the things I did was call my board chair and talk to her about I'd been asked to do this, what advice, if any, she had. Because again, if there are reputational effects, it's more for the university and in that role than it is for me personally. And, she sort of said, well, you got to decide if you think you can do it and you think you can help them and that's what you want to do, then, you know what your responsibilities are, make it work. So, I mean, she was quite supportive that, whatever I decided, she would support. So there was that concern about, if I dropped the ball, what adverse effect it might have on the university or whatever. The conditions under which I was sort of presented with the reality of if you agree to be board chair, we have people lined up and ready to start giving money to get you out of a $2.5 million ditch. If you don't, we're not going to do it. We've been asked to step up. We've looked at who's on the board. We've looked at the situation as best we can understand it in a quick review. And you got some good people on staff who are trying to do the right things. But if you're not willing to be chair, we're not going to do it. And then better than anybody. When I finally said yes, we were about 4 days away from basically shutting down entirely.
It was 36 hours.
Yeah. So that was,
36 hours away from.
wasn't, so what were the alternatives? The alternatives were, if you say no, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
If you say yes, it may fail, and people may blame you for the fact that it failed, but no one who knows you and no one you care about will blame you
Yeah.
that it failed. So if you think it's the right thing to do, just do it.
Yeah. Well, we're very glad that you said yes.
Well, I am too. So I think we're all in a good place after some pretty perilous times.
So next question. When I look at our board today, and when I look at our board over time, I mean, it's everybody that I've gotten to know. It's a really special group of people that are coming together to accomplish really magnificent things. How would you describe our board to people who are not in those meetings? Because this is a group that impacts thousands of people across the state, yet only a handful of people are in that room. And so, the board that has evolved over the last 2 years under your leadership, how would you describe that team of thought leaders to people that aren't a part of it?
Well, I think when I joined the board, I saw some of the qualities I see now that are wonderful. There were people on the board long before I ever got there, and people in leadership positions who cared passionately about the athletes and their families and the communities, and they were all in. I mean, they really cared. Part of and we have that now in spades. I think everyone on the board now is all in. I mean, these are people, apart from whatever their skill sets are or how they're situated in society, they care passionately about the mission of Special Olympics Oregon, about the families, the athletes, the communities. But there were members then who cared but didn't necessarily have sort of a life experience or career experience to really understand what it means to be on a board and what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to insist on being engaged in the operation of the board and how it's working, rather than taking a pass because somebody says, well, we'll take care of this. You don't have to worry. Just come to the meetings and we'll tell you what's going on. I think as a general proposition, that not only is that passion and caring there that I saw in many of the people who were on the board when I joined, there is that sense of obligation and commitment to approach this with the appropriate business perspective and sense that we need to check off that certain things are being done in appropriate ways. And we need to be sufficiently on top of the finances and other aspects of programming that we feel good about the way the organization is being managed. I think the sense of obligation to be engaged in oversight of the management and making sure the organization was running as it should in every way, programmatically, financially, et cetera, wasn't top of mind for everyone who was on the board when I joined, is at top of mind for everyone on the board now. Now, I talked earlier about the fact that when I was asked to join the board, it was kind of like, well, we just think it would be great to have the president of Oregon State University listed as a board member, so it's okay if you don't show up. I think there was a disproportionate, there shouldn't be any, but there was a disproportionate number of celebrity board members. And it's no criticism of them. I mean, these were people who said, well, I really don't have time for a board. And we're convinced, let us use your name because just being able to use your name will help. And if you care about helping, that's a way you can help, but you don't have to engage. So I think when I joined, there were some more celebrity-like
Mhm.
board members who didn't feel they had to be on top of things and insist on seeing financial reports and making their own judgments about whether things were being done the way they should have been done. That doesn't exist now. There's nobody on that board who doesn't think I need to know exactly what the hell is going on, how it's being done, and so forth. Now, you know, there are some staff and there are some people on the in your organization now who were there then, and I think of Mark, for example. Then as now, the day in, day out programming and activities were excellent. He is excellent. He was excellent then. He was on the job and doing it very well. So whether people were accepting they had responsibility for oversight for program as well as management, you could be assured then, you can be assured now, whether you're checking or not, programming is class A.
Yep.
Because Mark is in that position. And so, you know, maybe in a way, you know, I mean, in a sense, we never suffered on the programmatic side.
No,
We
never.
never had complaints about, you know, you had this event, it was awful, I was embarrassed, my kid was
Nationally,
you know,
we've
humiliated.
been regarded as a very strong program.
So substantively, in terms of doing the program, Mark really was holding all that together, even as the board was maybe not asking questions that you ought to be asking if you're on a board and you have oversight responsibility. It was really on the financial side that the lack of attention and lack of understanding of the need to be engaged by some of the board members led to our ending up in the situation that we ended up in. I mean, I can tell you, because I was quote unquote a celebrity board member, I had no committee assignments. I just had to either go or not go to the board meetings. And I think I actually went to just about every board meeting from the time I joined. But at every board meeting, I got reports. And there was a committee that reported on finances and other things. And those were always very rosy reports. Now, if I had studied the annual audit reports and read every footnote, I would have seen signals that everything is not all right. But you know what? I didn't read every footnote, and that was on me.
Yeah.
So when I talked to those families and said, you know, we let you down, I'm sorry. I mean, I didn't read the goddamn footnotes. If I had read the footnotes, I would have known early on, much earlier than the world at large did, that we had a problem that needed to be addressed.
Like you've carried that thread through the last 2 years and have continued to tell board members you're responsible for this. Like you have to be paying attention to the pre-reads, you have to be reading, and then you've always made sure to take the time during meetings. And there's certain voices on the board that I think are probably more comfortable with financials that tend to speak up more and dig in. But those have always been the focus of every meeting, is the finances and getting in the weeds and asking tough questions and healthy debate. And so I think that's a wonderful thing. And I've also heard from friends in Oregon in the nonprofit sector that what happened to us was kind of a cautionary tale, that there were a lot of boards that, as this was playing out very publicly for Special Olympics, we're not alone in, I think, how that can happen. I think our situation snowballed to a very dark place, but there were a lot of boards, as I understand, that realized, holy cow, that could have happened to us, you know, like, so it's not that anybody on our board were bad people or out to ruin this organization. I think it could have happened to a lot of boards. People join boards for the right reasons for the most part and care and want to do well and maybe trust too much that an organization is being run the way that they think it is or should be, or assume somebody else is watching. So maybe through everything we went through, we've helped other nonprofits kind of elevate their game and leadership and oversight as well.
Well, so one of the things I discovered early in life in a leadership position is that transparency and openness is very disciplining.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that everything you do is subject to review, I don't care who you are, and I don't care how properly motivated you are, you will pay more attention. You will do at least, if not a better job, because you know that everything is open and transparent and subject to review.
Yeah.
And so as a board and as a management, what you realize is, to the extent that you are called to accounts to present to the board, and that the board is engaged and paying attention, it's not about being too trusting.
Right.
It's about being accountable.
Yeah.
And both on the management side and on the board side, if there is accountability, the management will be more effective and successful, because again, openness and transparency means everything's subject to review. So you need to be able to explain and defend whatever actions or activities you've undertaken, because you're going to be held to account. It makes you a better manager, and it makes the board a better board, even if everybody would proceed on the best of intentions, absent openness and transparency. It has a disciplining effect on those who will be held to accounts and on those who are supposed to be providing oversight.
And we owe that to our athletes and donors. You know, we operate on donor dollars and for the athletes. So,
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put Special Olympics aside. I'm going to take 10 more minutes. Do you have 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
put Special Olympics over here, and I'm going to give you some rapid fire fun questions. Okay.
Okay.
So, rapid fire. You are an avid traveler. What are a few cities, places, countries that you feel everybody should visit if finances, COVID, all these barriers were not barriers? What are a few places that you would tell everybody to visit?
Well, I think a place that Oregonians ought to visit is Ireland. I can tell you, once you get outside of Dublin into the countryside, you will see incredibly beautiful rolling hills that remind you of the Willamette Valley.
Love it.
And it's just great to be to realize, there are lots of other places that are quite beautiful. And the cliffs of Nore are really pretty special. And if you go to Blarney Castle, you have to hang upside down and kiss the Blarney Stone. And there's actually a story there. Beth and I went there, and when I came back, I sent an email to the folks in the foundation. I said they ought to know that Beth and I had just visited Blarney Castle and kissed the Blarney Stone. So I thought I was ready for the upcoming fundraising campaign.
I love it.
So that's one. I think the Great Wall of China, my God. It just the sheer magnitude and majesty of it is really wonderful. I would say that Sydney, Australia is. I thought that there was a restaurant, I don't know if it's still there, called Ondine's in San Francisco, across the bay in Sausalito, and you could sit in there. They had a sort of sunken bar with a picture window, and you could look out back at the San Francisco skyline with the Golden Gate Bridge going into the city from off to your right. So you're seeing the bridge and you're seeing the city skyline. And I thought that San Francisco was the most beautiful place, city place, not natural setting, that I'd ever seen until I got to Sydney, Australia. and to be there where the Opera House is in that area is just, it's beautiful, and it's a place for people to see if they can. There's a city in China, Xi'an, which is where the terracotta soldiers are. And I think to see that and actually see the terracotta soldiers that they've dug up and pieced back together and so forth, that's pretty exceptional. And then a couple of years ago, I was in Egypt.
Yes.
And we went to the Valley of the Kings and did a camel ride and a hot air balloon ride. And
were you able to get close to the pyramids? Like how close?
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we got close to them. I think at the time, they may or may not have been letting people go in. But when I went on that visit, they were not letting people in. But when I went there in 1983, I actually climbed up to the top of Cheops pyramid. And Cheops is the biggest one, the first one. You could walk in and out of the pyramids and go up the stairs to the vault. And yeah, it was all wide open. So that was pretty amazing.
That's a good bucket list.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can check those off in my lifetime. Okay. How would your college roommates describe you?
Well, fortunately, I didn't have college roommates. I lived at home because I was the youngest.
Mom and Dad.
I was the youngest of three. Yeah. So we were all kind of used to each other. Okay, I'm not sure how I would have gone to college otherwise. I mean, my dad was a truck mechanic. I remember in 1968, we celebrated that he had grossed $6,000 for the first time in his life.
Wow.
So we didn't have much. I shared a bedroom with two brothers. So they really were my dorm mates.
So how would your dorm mates describe you?
I grew up in a dorm room.
I love it. I love it. You can host a dinner party for 5 people, dead or alive, anybody, celebrities, people you've never met before, or people close to your heart. You can host a dinner party for 5 people. Who would be at your table?
Well, I think an easy one would be to say Jesus Christ. Just I mean, one assumes there are a lot of things to be discussed, including how his father is screwing up a lot of things and really ought to make some changes. I always thought that Brussels sprouts should taste like chocolate. They don't.
You'd ask of Jesus Christ.
I think, I think Galileo would be someone who would be fascinating. Certainly Abraham Lincoln. I think Bobby Kennedy. And this will sound a little bit different because it actually was someone I knew and cared deeply for, John Glenn. I don't know, I probably could think of others, but there are a lot of people over time I've admired. What's that?
How did you know John Glenn?
Well, when I was at Ohio State University, he was stepping down from the Senate and he was looking to donate his papers. He went to Muskingum College in Muskingum, Ohio, and he was smart enough to know people weren't going to drive to Muskingum to see his collection, that he'd be better off if they were at Ohio State. And so we talked about putting together a school of public policy and public service at Ohio State University. And we were making a transition in presidents. I was interim provost and Britt was coming in from Maryland as the new president. And the chair of the political science department and the political advisor to the president, who was out of political science, they were both lobbying the president not to accept the offer from John Glenn to have his papers there and to start a school of public service, public policy, because the political science was, I don't know, top 10 programs in the country. And, this would just take students from political science and, just hurt both programs. We shouldn't do it. And you know me well enough to know I'm not the quietest person when things are being debated. So Britt looked at me at one point and he said, Ed, you're being unusually quiet. You haven't said anything. What do you think? Because these two are lobbying the incoming president about we shouldn't do this. And he said, what's going on? What do you think? And I looked at him and I said, Britt, this is John Glenn. And he said, you're right, we're going to do it. Anyway, so we actually started, the School of Public Administration became the John Glenn School of Public Service and Public Policy. It is now a college.
Oh, wow.
It is the only college added to Ohio State University, I think, probably in the last, 50 or 100 years. And in the process, obviously, I served as provost on the board of the John Glenn Institute. I got to know John, I got to know Annie. I think you even saw the picture in my office with John Glenn and Neil Armstrong.
Yes.
It was all pretty magical, but he and Annie were just such good people. So a chance to see him one more time,
yeah,
I think that'd be pretty good.
Very cool. I love it. What would you serve at your dinner? What would be your favorite meal to be able to share with Jesus Christ and John Glenn?
Well, I have rather pedestrian tastes. I could say, well, I have a number of choices. One would be, I always, for my birthday, my late wife would always make a meatloaf. I love meatloaf. Not very highbrow. So I love meatloaf. I love barbecued ribs. I love filet mignon. And then you can get into some more exotic things, but probably just pretty basic.
Serving meatloaf.
Serve a meatloaf, yeah. And then a red chocolate layer cake with vanilla icing. Ooh. With lots of butter in it and lots of calories.
Good call. What is something about you that would surprise most people?
Well, I think just because I'm an old fogey at this point, but when I was younger, I loved sports. So I'm never very talented. So I was kind of the classic weekend warrior. Mm-hmm. Well, somebody convinced me when I was turning 50 to run a marathon, that they were going to run a marathon, the Columbus Marathon. So at age 50, I did my first marathon.
I love it.
And in the next 14 years, I did 13 marathons.
You did?
Including 4 Portland marathons while serving as president of Oregon State University. And I think, that's something I think most people would just be surprised that was possible. But
yeah. After the age of 50, 13 marathons.
Yeah, I did one a year.
That's amazing.
I did 9 Columbus marathons and 4 Portland marathons. The last one was in 2008 at age 64. Any
interest in doing another?
No, when I finished the one in 2008, Beth would take me into Portland. We'd stay overnight and we'd rendezvous at Starbucks. There's a Starbucks not too far from the finish line. While I tried to drag myself back to the hotel to stay at the Hilton. Anyway, I told her that the only thing I could think when I was finishing was to ask myself, what was the point of that? And I didn't have a point. So I think I'm done. And that was the last one that I did.
That's awesome. I love it. Okay, I'm going to close with this question, and we'll bring it back to Special Olympics. If there was something you would want the athletes and the families to know, and this isn't about the past, it's more forward thinking. Like if you know, as your term ended with board chair, and just what do you want athletes and families to know about our organization, our commitment, the North Star that we're chasing? What would you want to leave them with?
Well, I guess first let me give a message to the athletes. You know, it is Special Olympics Oregon, but what they need to understand is before there was Special Olympics or special anything, they're special. Each and every one of them is a unique miracle. And they should feel really good about themselves. And they should think going forward about how they can make the world a better place, how they can make other people's lives more positive and meaningful for knowing them. And if they can do that, nothing else much matters. There are always people who are going to be more famous and people who are going to, you know, maybe be in history books. Who the hell cares? I mean, it's what you do in the lives you touch that matters. And it's true for each of them as it is for everyone else. And being clear about what matters is really important, so you don't waste your time on irrelevant things. So that's something I would like them to keep in mind. In terms of Special Olympics Oregon and Special Olympics writ large, I think the message I would want them to get is there are a lot of things in this world that are good and bad and in between, but connected to Special Olympics are people who genuinely care about them, who love them, and who understand how special they are each individually, and who are incredibly dedicated to helping them have happier, more successful lives. And so anytime they run into a situation or people who are mean to them or who make them feel badly, they ought to remember there are a lot of good people who love them and who are there for them and who will always be there for them.
Kind of reminds me of how you answered the question I asked you about, were you afraid of failure in taking on the board chair role at the time you did? And you said, the people who know me and the people whose opinions I care about, that's where I'm going to pay attention. So kind of that same advice, like pay attention to the people who care about you, right?
Yeah.
And let the bullies and the naysayers and all of the other negativity, it's not worth investing.
Let go of it. Yeah, let go of it. Life's too short for hate.
Good message now, today, more than ever, I think.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Thank you, wise one. I appreciate you.
Okay, well, you have a good weekend. What is this? What's coming in several weeks? I mean, it's this Pony Express, or what are we talking about?
Oh my God, don't get that excited, but it's just something that we wanted to do for you. It's not a big deal. Like, you know, with Special Olympics, we don't send expensive gifts or anything extravagant. So temper your expectations, but we just wanted you to have a little token of our gratitude. So
well, that's nice.
You just have a little trinket on its way.
That's
But
nice.
I hope you'll use it and enjoy it, and just remember how much we love you.
Well, that's very sweet. Thank you.
All right.
And again, you know, if you want a closing statement for for the athletes and families and communities, tell them that the best thing I think's happened at Special Olympics Oregon is you showing up in June of 2018.
Oh, appreciate you. I was a deer in headlights.
I think really we all were.
Like, I didn't have any of the expertise that truthfully, if you guys knew the situation you were in and what needed to be done, I would not have been the person that you would have hired. I had none of the expertise needed.
Yeah.
Maybe the only thing that I brought to the table that was valuable was surrounding myself with good people and being a good judge of character on who to hold close and who to listen to and who to ask for help from. And luckily, you know, we were able to develop a really amazing village of people that just came together and rallied. And so,
well, what you brought with you that I don't know if it's most important, but it is among the most important attributes that never would have been picked up in an interview is you're not a quitter. You don't ever back down on something you care about, and you are capable of caring deeply about things. And in that sense, you are as steady as a rock.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
I signed up for softball in 8th grade because there was a cute boy that played baseball and I wanted to go to the party. So I signed up for softball. And found out that I am not a good softball player. I made the CC team, not the A team, not the B team, not the C team, the CC team. And so as soon as the rosters came out, I went home and I told my parents I was quitting because, and I didn't even think twice. I was just like, well, I'm not doing this. This is dumb. I'm not going for softball. And my dad said, no, you're not quitting. You signed up. So you're going to be on the CC team and learn from it, enjoy it, hate every minute of it. And maybe it'll make you think twice about what you sign up for, but you're not quitting. And
good for him.
First experience, and be careful what you sign up for. And I think there were definitely moments in this experience where I was like, what in God's name did I sign up for? But it goes back to the athletes. And it's kind of the same position you were put in, where I was not necessarily the right person for this job. But if I said no, or if I quit, there wasn't time to find anybody else, like the right candidate to go out and say, okay, we need somebody who knows debt restructure and this and that. And it would have fallen on its face. So it's kind of you and I were kind of put in similar situations, I guess, where it was like, all right, I can quit, but then I know it's going to fail, or I can stay and it still might fail, but at least I tried.
Right. Right.
So it's kind of funny. I guess I never really thought of it that way, but you and I were sort of put in.
But a lot of people would have quit. Said, look, I didn't sign up for this. It's got nothing to do with me. This is if this goes south, I'm going to be the person who was at the wheel when it went down, and that's not fair to me. The hell with it. You didn't do that.
Here we are, Ed.
Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Getting better all the time.
You have been an amazing board chair, and I've said this to you before, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. You're an amazing friend to me. I appreciate you more than I can say. I think of you as a mentor, a friend, somebody who I respect, who I know is always going to shoot me straight. And there are times where I've gotten off the phone where I'm like, oh, I don't know how am I going to do this? Or I really screwed that up, or I should have done this better. But every single thing you've ever said to me, I've taken it in and I've used it, and it's made me better. And I appreciate your leadership. It's helped me become a better leader. And you're such a dear person to me. So
well, I'm also kind of a jerk. I mean, I can't believe I actually gave you a page, 7, with a list of 7 things. Saying, this is what you have to do.
I watched you during that board meeting, and I mean, it's intimidating. You're the president of Oregon State University, and I don't know you, and I'm just that your name is on is going up in flames, and I'm watching you right during that meeting, and you handed it to me. It wasn't a jerk. It was like, you were the one person, honestly, out of that whole board. And I felt daggers and darts from a lot of board members. Like, there were a lot of board members that did not like me, and in some ways worked against me. Someday I'll tell you some stories that will make your head spin about that experience. But you were somebody, I knew you wanted to help. I knew you were somebody that was a part of a solution and knew a lot more than I did about how to get through it. And so I saved it. I saved it. And if you go through the list, we checked off just about every single thing that you had on that list of like, here's what needs to happen. And it's, and I don't think I ever shared that with you, but yeah, I've had that
No,
list.
I was surprised when you brought that up, and it was like, well, yeah, you know, and Beth had a way of telling me at times, you know, you're being a jerk. And I could hear her whispering in my ear if she'd been there and seen me give you the list, like, you know, you really are a jerk.
Probably only Beth could say that. No, I have appreciated everything that you've done for me and for this organization, and your heart and your integrity. And I trust you. I trust you with every fiber of my being. And I just appreciate you. And so I wanted to be the one to do the interview with you. It meant a lot to me. And so I love writing. It's something I don't get to do very often. And I don't know that I'm a good writer, but I enjoy it. And so I'm looking forward to writing this article about you. I'll let you know when it's done.
Okay, sounds fair.
Thank you. Give Chuck a big hug for me and tell him to enjoy his little cone head.
Yeah, we're gonna go out for a walk now, I think, for a little while.
Do you go for a walk in the suit and tie? Like, are you always, okay, here's my last rapid fire question. Do you ever just throw on sweatpants, like sweatpants, sweatshirt, backwards hat, like, or are you always like just impeccably dressed? And
No, I mean, most days, given we're all living in isolation, I mean, I'm usually, because it's one person banging around this house, it's 68 degrees. That's pretty cold if you're not constantly on the move. So, I mean, I'm wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. I had a Zoom interview before this for a county commissioner who's stepping down. And I've got another Zoom at 1 o'clock for this NC SARA, which is the online reciprocity agreement organization for online education in colleges and universities. And we're meeting with people from a foundation who have lots of complaints about what we are and aren't doing. So it's really to meet with the leaders of that board that I've got a shirt and tie on.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I will be amazed someday if I hop on and you're in a sweatshirt. I'll be like.
But I'll tell you something. You talk about how people influence you. I had an 8th grade English teacher named Mrs. Young. Now, Mrs. Young was sort of, I don't know, she was just a regular person. I mean, she wasn't attractive, she wasn't unattractive, but she always dressed very nicely. She always had a dress on. She'd always have, her, costume jewelry on, pearls and earrings or whatever. And one day in class, one of the girls said to her, Mrs. Young, you always are so dressed up for school. And it's changed over the years. But when I was in, 8th grade, I mean, most teachers did wear, if they were men, wore jackets and ties or whatever. But she always still stood out, even though people dressed up more than they have in recent decades. She always stood out as somebody who dressed very nicely. And so this one girl asked her, you always dress so nicely. Why do you always dress up like that? And she said that her mother had told her, if you're going to be a teacher and people have to look at you all day, you ought to at least try to look nice.
I love that. I love
so
that.
This is my attempt to look nice. If you got to look at me, at least it ought not to scare you.
You look beautiful. Well, you and Chuck, you dapper dons, you go on your walk and enjoy, and this means so much to me. I know you so well, but this was fun to get to know even more about you. I appreciate it.
Good talking to you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Ed. You too. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.